G'day and welcome back to Life in 5, the podcast where we speak to some of the biggest names in sport, entertainment and the media. I'm MG and today's guest, well, he's done it all across the media, whether it be breakfast radio, whether it be hard-hitting interviews or just calling it how he sees it. He brings energy, honesty and plenty of ticker. It's my pleasure to welcome to Life in 5, 2GB's own Ben Fordham. G'day, Benny.
Well, MG, you've made it. You've made it. Your name's on the banner.
I've made it because you're sitting here.
Oh, yeah. Well, we go back a long way, mate. So I really appreciate you having me on the podcast and congratulations.
Thank you, Benny.
It's a great idea.
Oh, thank you.
And can I just tell you, not that I want to take over straight away because it's your podcast.
Well, before you do, I want to make this into a TV show eventually. And guess who is the host?
Who?
You.
Come on, mate. You'll be hosting
I want you to host it.
But it was a real challenge to pick the 5 photos.
A little background. I got a call 2 weeks ago from Benny and I saw his name come up on my phone. I went, no, he's going to cancel on me. So I know how busy you are and I wouldn't have minded.
No.
MG, Benny Fordham. I said, hey, Benny, mate, these 5 photos, I'm taking them very seriously. I've gone around to Mum's house to get an old box full of photos.
Yeah.
You took it, out of everyone so far, you have been the most serious.
Well, full confession, I reckon it messed with my head. On the weekend just been, when I was actually going, right, I've got to settle on this, because you imagine someone says,
I know.
You've got to choose 5 crucial moments from your life, and then you start workshopping in your head, hang on, I can't leave this person out or that person. But then it's not about finding the people, name-checking people who are going to say, well, I'm glad he mentioned me. It's about what's going to be interesting or entertaining for the podcast as well. So apologies in advance for people who I've completely brushed out of the photos, but it was I found myself getting quite melancholy at times because you're looking back on things and realising, all right, these were big moments in my life.
Well, that's the whole concept of the podcast. I think I wanted to get people who had a story to tell via photos, but also I don't want to be the main person. I want them to be the main person. And the 5 photos that you bring, that's the content.
Yeah.
So every photo...
Well, it was hard. It was hard. It was genuinely hard. And what I didn't anticipate was genuinely feeling a little bit of the black dog creeping in.
Wow.
Over the course of the weekend, because I kept putting it off, and that's why I was calling you to go, okay, what do you really want out of this, and what should the photos be, and do you want a mix of light and shade, or I could just pick famous faces and tell stories, but then I thought that doesn't give the family side of things, so thanks for giving me the black dog, but now that I'm here, I feel a whole lot better.
Well, let's go to your first photo. This is 2 little blonde boys. Let's tell me who was in this photo and why is this so important to Benny Fordham?
Well, the kid on the phone is not me. That's my little brother, Nick.
Nick?
And that's me looking at my little brother while he's on the phone. That's actually taken, that photograph, in our cubby house. So the phone's not plugged in. The cubby house was built by a mate of Dad's called Peter Fussell, in our backyard of our house in French's Forest in Sydney. Dad wasn't much of a handyman, so Fuss came around and did the job. And I just picked it because Nick is actually my manager. He's my brother.
Of course.
And my best mate. But he is my manager, so he actually takes calls on my behalf. And
oh, wow.
And I just look back at that and think, well, first of all, I like the fact that I'm looking up to him as my little brother. He was the cutest little kid in the world. I can remember when I was growing up, people would come over to our house and they'd all say, how cute's Nick? And I'd think, that little bastard.
He's tall.
Yeah, he is. And look, I really admire him because when he started out, he kind of went from job to job to job out of school, where I knew what I was doing. I knew I was a radio guy from the moment I started listening to radio. I wanted to do it and then bounced into TV as well. But Nick, when he left school, was a bit lost. I can remember he was kind of selling phones at one stage, not like burner phones or whatever. He was like working for some phone company that had to sell office phone systems, and I think he's only...
It's an ironic photo.
It is, now that I think about it. And I think the only deal he did was with my parents. Like they felt sorry for him, so they went, yeah, right, we'll put a new phone system in at work. And then eventually he said, look, why don't I have a look at Mum and Dad's business, the Fordham Company? So my mum and dad, they started around this time when we were growing up. They filled in our garage at home and built an office. And just had a go. A little bit like where we are here, of someone setting up a business and going, if you build it, they will come. And the phone was always ringing when we were growing up. We had 2 phone lines, and this is before mobile. So one was the home phone and one was the Fordham Company. And we knew that if you answered that phone, mate, you better do a good job of saying, good morning, the Fordham Company, Ben speaking. Mum and Dad wanted to give the impression like they ran a professional company. Right? Little did people know, a week earlier, this was a garage.
Yes.
So I look at that and it reminds me not only of the sacrifice that my mum and dad made when we were growing up, but also what my little brother's turned into because he then started working at the Fordham Company and they manage people for a living. They manage celebrities essentially.
He's now a juggernaut, man.
Yeah, and Nick's turned the business into a whole other thing that I might touch on later. But he's really made a big success of himself. But in the early years at the Fordham Company, my dad used to say to me, fucking hell, mate, that brother of yours is hopeless. Excuse my language.
No.
He'd say, oh, he's driving me mad. Because you imagine working with your mum and dad.
Johnny saying that.
Oh, mate, he was like blowing up. And then eventually Nick started kicking goals. Like I can even remember Lisa Wilkinson, the TV host, who used to host the Today Show. I was on there and more recently over at Channel 10. At one stage, she was looking for a manager. She had several managers saying, we want to manage you because she's a superstar. And she signed with the Fordham Company. But when she did, she said to my mum and dad, because mum's involved in the business as well, Veronica, the big kahuna, she said, I want you to know something. I was really impressed by all of you and I've decided to sign with the Fordham Company, but I want you to know that it was Nick that really made me realise, because a little bit younger and I think they provide that generational change as well. So I'm really proud of him. A few years ago, he was part of a business deal that went down that a lot of rugby league fans would be familiar with, which was Adam McDougall and the Manshake. So when Adam McDougall created the Manshake, he said to my brother Nick, can I get some help? Can you manage me? Nick said, mate, you don't need a manager. You're not even playing anymore. He said, but I've got this product that I've created.
Wow.
Nick started using it.
Wow.
Nick was like, this works. It's really good. And so then we're all having a go at the Manshake. And then Nick said to him wisely, mate, instead of you paying me a management fee or whatever, why don't you give me 10% of Manshake and I'll show you what I can do with it.
Wow.
Right? And Nick, through his hard work and contacts and everything else, landed Mad Dog all these great opportunities, including in the Sunday Telegraph. You'd open up in the back of the Sunday Telegraph and it was Mad Fit with Adam McDougall. He'd feature a new celeb every week or whatever, right? But Nick did a deal with the Sunday Telegraph, which was, we will provide that content free of charge. We'll organise the celebrity. We'll do it all for you. But you give us the ad at the bottom of the page.
Genius.
Right? And a few years ago, Manshake sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. And my brother could have retired if he wanted to. And as I say to him, you could have bought a penthouse in Barangaroo or something like that. Instead, he bought the house next door to my mum. He knocked a hole in the back fence. So now when you walk out the back of my mum's house,
his house,
there's a gate that goes into Nick's backyard.
Awesome.
With his wife Liz and two girls, Maisie and Coco. And now the grandchildren, they bounce into Mama's place every afternoon and go, what are you having for dinner? And they say to Nick, what are you cooking for dinner?
Good.
And then they choose where they're going to have dinner, So I'm really proud of him. And when he pulled off the big mega deal, we caught up as a family and we toasted him. He didn't have a drink. He gave up the grog actually a few years ago. I think that's been part of his success.
Yeah, of course.
But I said to him, Nick, we're so proud of you, but I've got to tell you something, mate. We all thought you were a dead shit.
Especially Dad.
Yeah. So this is a big surprise to us. And he goes, you thought I was a dead shit? He goes, I thought I was a dead shit. So he's not. He's one of the smartest blokes around and he's built all these great business things. He's worked out that one of the best things you can do is go into partnership with people.
Yeah.
So now he's more inclined to go, look, if you've got a really good idea and if I believe in it, let's go into partnership. I'll show you what I can do to help you.
Wow.
And obviously they've got a great skill as well. So, yeah, I look back at that and say, well, now if someone contacts me and says, look, we want to talk to you about an opportunity.
So talk to my brother.
I'll say, well, look, do you want to have a yarn to my brother? And so that's Nick Fordham taking my calls, even though I can promise you that phone was not connected
and
to
I think
anything.
Everyone around our vintage can resonate towards the fort was built out the back. You spend every waking hour in there pretending you were someone. And that is a fantastic photo. Well done to kick off proceedings.
That was our childhood.
By the way, a little sidebar, I've tried to get Adam McDougall on here.
Yeah.
And the last time I spoke to him, he was in Madrid. Before
He's too rich.
Before that, he was in Belarus. I'm going, mate, what he goes,
Come on, mad dog.
Come on, doggy. Photo number 2 is a young, it looks like Simon O'Donnell in the middle of the glasses, the cricketer, but it's not. It's Ben Fordham on the left there. And on the right is arguably our best Prime Minister of all time, Mr. John Howard.
Yeah.
Tell us what this photo is, where is it happening, and why is this significant?
Yeah, the bloke in the background who's just in the shot is John Anderson. He was the Deputy Prime Minister at the time.
Yes.
His hair's a little bit greyer now. But yeah, this was I suppose I picked this picture because it was the start of something special in my radio career. I started working in radio at the age of 15, doing work experience on the Alan Jones Breakfast Show for 1 week.
Wow.
Then I started working for free on the continuous call team with Ray Hadley. Then they eventually said, we're going to have to start paying you, and I got paid $60 every Sunday. So throughout school, when my mates were going to 18ths and 17ths and everything else, I would often miss out.
How old are you here?
There I would have been about 20 years old. So I started working full-time at 18. After about a year, we had a new boss who came in who informed me that I was going to Canberra to become a political correspondent.
Wow.
I said to Julie Flynn, my boss, I'll need to go home and talk to Mum and Dad first. And she said, what about? And I said, just about whether I'm 19 years old. I just want to make sure that this is a big move, like moving away from your family.
Yeah.
She said, listen, mate, you're going to fucking Canberra. I was like,
Jules.
okay. Like, she was no nonsense. But I said, okay. But she said, go and talk to your mum and dad all you want, but you're going to friggin' Canberra.
If you want to stay, yeah.
Yeah, so I packed up the red Mitsubishi Colt and I moved to Canberra. And I was following John Howard around. This was out in the middle of Queensland, somewhere in the middle of drought. But John Howard is someone I look up to a lot. He treats people so well. He was legendary for remembering the names of everyone. I think the first time I met him, I'd met him before this, it was on the Young Endeavour, I think it was from memory, which was this kind of old ship in Sydney Harbour. And he said to me, he asked my name and I told him, and we spoke about cricket. And the next time I saw him, he said, you're the cricket guy. Ben. Holy moly.
Wow.
He wasn't even the opposition leader, I don't think, then, but he then became the opposition leader and the Prime Minister. And, I learned an interesting little trick from John Howard. My mum told me a story once because Mum and Dad had dealt with him before because through their management business, they were managing Mark Taylor, the Australian cricket captain who became Australian of the Year when John Howard was the Prime Minister. So they spent a bit of time together. Yeah, Australia's favourite air.
Was that you guys?
We've got it on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Was that the Fordham?
Yeah, the Fordham company did the Fujitsu deal. And you know what? Mark Taylor is still with Fujitsu 21 years later or something like that because he treats people well.
He's a good man.
And speaking of treating people well, Mum gave me this tip once. She said, we've got to know John and Jeanette Howard quite a bit through Mark Taylor and a few other things. She goes, he does this thing. They were out at a footy game one night and she goes, look, when you're in an environment and it's football, people will naturally gravitate towards your dad, right?
Always.
It's footy. She goes, no problem. All right, Fordo, and then they'll typically go, oh, hi, Veronica. She said, that's fine.
Yep.
I know, it's a man's environment. We're at the footy, no problem. But she said, I saw John Howard do this thing. He saw us from about 30 metres away. I saw him clock John and clock Veronica. This is my mum telling this. And he made his way over to us. So I knew he was coming. But as he made his way closer to them, he walked straight up to my mum and said, Veronica.
Wow.
Veronica, how are you?
How good?
Kiss, cuddle.
Yep.
How's the family? How are they all going? And how are you? And whatever. And then he said, G'day, John.
Yep.
And Mum said, he came and spoke to me first, probably because he knew, well, this is more of a bloke's environment. More people will be talking to Dad. But my dad was standing there like a spare dick while John Howard spoke to my mum for a few minutes first and then said, John, how are you? So I now copy that.
Yeah.
To the degree that I can remember a few years ago being at a function at Luna Park and I was emceeing it and John and Jeanette Howard were there.
Oh.
So during the break, where they go, okay, now enjoy your meals, I thought I'll go over and say good day. So as I walked over, I thought, oh, perfect. So I walked over and said, Mrs. Howard, Ben Fordham, how are you? She goes, oh, hi, Ben, how are you? You're doing a good job. And I said, how are you going? And are you well? And how are the kids? And how's Melanie? And how's the boys?
Wow.
And so we chat. And then I said, G'day, Mr. Howard. How are you? Good to see you too. So,
Did he shake your hand and go, "You prick, you took it off me"?
you've stolen my
You took it
thing.
off me.
But look, I thought he was the ultimate as a Prime Minister
So do I.
at being able to represent. I had this thing with John Howard that when he spoke,
Yep.
and particularly we faced some big problems when he was PM, including 9/11 and things like that. He would occasionally get a little bit of a quivering bottom lip. He never looked scared.
No.
But he had a way of being in
Emotional.
front of a camera and making us realise, hang on, he's feeling what we're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think he did it brilliantly. And even still to this day, when I see him, I walk up and say, "Mr. Howard, Ben Fordham."
Yep.
He goes, "I know who you are, Ben."
Yeah.
You introduce yourself to me all the time. I go, "Well, you know."
You're a gentleman.
But he's just so impressive and I always enjoy dealing with him.
We talk about your radio days. Photo number 3 is you on the Today Show, which you were there for a long period of time. And I must say, probably in its halcyon days with the cast of Georgie Gardner and Carlos and Lisa and Dickie and
Stevie Jacobs, Georgie Gardner.
That's the dream team.
Yeah, Stevie Jacobs.
So how did you go from radio to TV?
How did I go from radio to TV? Well, I used to, when I was in the radio newsroom, we'd all look up at the TV at 6 o'clock and bag the shit out of whoever was on TV. Because in radio, you've got to do 50 stories a day. In TV, you might do one.
That's right.
For the 6 p.m. news. And we'd all go, well, look at these
How
frauds
easy.
there. But then I thought, I don't want to be one of those people. I better go and do it, right? Because I don't want to be someone who's just there bagging other people. If it's so easy, maybe I should go and do it myself. So I'd had a few offers over the years to come and have a go at TV. I ended up going to Sky News first because a guy called Tony Ritchie said, "Mate, you're probably going to get some offers to go to 7 and 9. He said, "Come to Sky News. No one's watching it. You can make all your mistakes," because it had just started.
Good advice.
And then make all your mistakes here when no one's watching, and then one of the others will pick you up. And then sure enough, what happened? Mike Munro called me.
Mike Munro.
Yeah. And I said,
Was he on a current affair at the time?
yeah, he'd just been asked to host a current affair. I was at lunch at Bill and Tony's, a little joint in Darlinghurst, having a schnitzel with cheese. And this phone called, I picked it up and he said, "G'day, Ben, it's Mike Munro." And I've got mates who take
Pissed out of you.
the piss.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Oh, yeah.
I said, "Oh, Twitcher." Sorry?
Twitch.
Twitch.
Mike Munro's going, "Do I twitch?"
I said, "Mate, I'm at lunch. Twitch, can I ring you back?" He goes, "Sorry, I don't." I said, and then I thought it was another bloke. So I said, "Rosa." He goes, "Ben, it's Mike Munro."
Oh, how good.
And he goes, "If you ring Channel 9 and ask for me, I'll pick up my phone." I said, "Mike, I'm so sorry.
Wow.
I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassed." So I did a current affair. I did some stories for 60 Minutes. And then one day, Tom Malone, who was the boss of the Today Show, called me and he said, "Mate, I want you to come and join the Today Show." So I
Wow.
couldn't believe it. So I did. I'd known most of them through, various ways over the years. Knew Carl really well. I'd always admired Carl as a performer. In fact, when I met him, when I first met Carl, this is before he was even a Today Show host. I met him in Queensland outside a court one day. We were both covering a court case or something. And I said, "Mate, you're going to think I'm gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
But the first time I saw you on TV, I wrote your name down in my diary."
Wow.
He goes, "You're so gay, bro." Not that there's anything wrong with that. I said, yeah. I said, but the reason I did it is because this guy popped up. I could hear this voice and I was like, who
You're
the
kind of
hell is
transfixed,
that?
were you?
And then he popped up on screen. He looked good too.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a head like a busted ass,
Well,
it's,
it's hard.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. So I wrote down Karl Stefanovic because I thought he was that good. And he's proven over the years that he is. Lisa Wilkinson sitting alongside him. I mean, Lisa just did this job on the Today Show she was the perfect +1
Perfect.
to Carl's craziness. I mean, a journo in her own right and has done a million things in magazines and television and
Cleo, wasn't it? Cleo?
everything else, yeah. But she, if you go to YouTube and you search, like there's all these things where Lisa pretends like she doesn't know what she's saying. She might be talking about hairy balls or something else like that, but she'll pretend like she doesn't realise what she's doing. And there's like 50 of them back to back. I mean, Lisa, I've often said, and I've said this to Carl, like Lisa was really the glue on that show. When Today's Show was going through this period, which was a really strong point for the show, Lisa was the consistency because Carl was all over the shop, you know, and he's had private life issues and whatever he's now.
And that's kind of the allure. You know, you want to see
Yeah.
him to see what he's up to today.
Yeah, and he was just so crazy, you know. And Dickie Wilkins, I became best mates with out of all that. Dickie is one of my closest mates in the world.
Good man, Dickie.
Oh, mate, I've often said, out of all the people I've met in TV, if I called Dickie now and said, hey, mate, I need you to get to Penrith, he'd go, what for? What's happened? I go, mate, I can't explain. I need you to get here now. He'd be in the car on the way. He is the most rock-solid, reliable person you'll ever come across. And Georgie Gardner's become a lifelong friend. Stevie Jacobs was just funny as hell. And, yeah, it was a time we got to travel the world.
How long did you spend on the Today Show?
4 years.
Yeah.
I said I'd do one because I got offered the Today Show and drive time on 2GB at the same time. And Jodie, my wife, said, you can't do both. What are you going to do? I said, I'll do both for 1 year. I did both for 4 years.
Hard?
Yeah, it was full on. And then Jodie said to me, we had this coffee one day, you know, when you sense, we're having a serious conversation here.
Sit down, Dale.
And she said, she said to me, sit down, Dale. Yeah. She goes, I don't think you've got room in your life to start a family, do you? And I said, yeah, well, of course I do. She goes, what? Waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, doing the Today Show and then doing drive time. And I said, no, I'm quitting one of them next year. And she goes, oh, really? Which one? The Today Show.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
She goes, oh, when did you decide that? I said, yeah. And so then I went, all right, well, and the reason I went with that is because the Today Show is not my show.
No.
Right? But when you do a radio show and it's got your name on it, a bit like this here, that's your show.
Yeah.
You get to choose who the guests are. You get to choose what you're talking about.
Yep.
No one's telling you how to do it or what to do. So, yeah, I love TV, but radio's in my blood. And then after doing 10 years of the drive show, I then 4 or 5 years ago switched into breakfast.
Where you remain the juggernaut you are today. This fourth photo is something close to my heart because I know both of these men pretty well. I've had a drink with both of them. Your dad, Johnny.
You haven't had a drink with my dad in a while because
I haven't.
He's been dead.
And the eighth immortal, Andrew Johns. Why is this photo significant for you?
For anyone who thinks it's weird that I was just laughing about my dad dying, you don't know my dad.
Tell us about it. You were telling us off air about your dad's death.
Yeah, look, this photo was taken less than 24 hours before my dad died.
Really?
Yep. So that's in St Vincent's Hospice in Darlinghurst. But what happened with Dad? Dad got throat cancer and he battled it for a number of years, went through radiation, did all that kind of stuff. And then it got to the point where they said to him, mate, we've run out of options.
Yep.
There's nothing more we can do. We've tried the medication, we've tried the radiation, we've done everything. There's nothing more we can do for you.
Wow.
And he got to a point where, because of the throat cancer, his mouth was so dry that he had no saliva in his mouth. And he'd say to me, he goes, mate, you don't realise how much you value frigging saliva until you got none.
Wow.
And your mouth is just bone dry. So on the day that the doctors said, mate, we've got nothing more we can do for you, they said to him, without any more treatment, you've probably got 2 months to 6 months. I then said to Dad, listen, I'm going to stop work immediately, right? And let's go on an adventure, right? Now, I don't want to sound like I missed out on anything because I'd already done this with him, but I said, let's go on another one. You know, like even weeks before that, I took him to Brisbane because I was up for a radio award and I said to Dad, I want you to be there in case I win. And just before going, Mum said, he's really not well. So I called the organisers and said, listen, I'm not going to cart my dad to Brisbane for his son not to win an award. So if I don't win, just let me know. And they said, I think you want to bring him. So 2 weeks before this, I'm there in Brisbane and they say, best talk show presenter in Australia, Ben Fordham.
Wow.
And I organised for my dad, I said, because I knew that I was winning, I said to my mate Zach McLean, who was there with me, I said, make sure you then get him out of the room around outside there so we can be there together for the photo with the trophy and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's special.
So once they said 2 months to go, Dad said, I'll be out of here in 2 weeks. I said, how do you propose to do that? He goes, mate, I'm not sticking around. Once I know, you know, he got to see all of his grandkids. He took all of us to...
This was the last time Joey saw him?
Yeah. So then we went in there and I said, well, Dad, we need to have certain conversations with certain people. So I had a conversation with a very, very caring person inside that hospital and I explained to them that when the time came that my dad would like some assistance with his final moments so that he wasn't in any pain.
As we all should have.
And I'd say to anyone, if you're ever in that situation, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't engage the doctor or the nurse in too much conversation. You just tell them and you walk away. And then generally they will help you with that. So I said to my dad, Dad, it's all sorted. He goes, how do you know? I said, I've had a conversation.
Wow.
He goes, oh, well, mate, I trust you, but I want to hear it myself. So I brought this person in and I said, just confirming that this is what's going to happen. So this was the day before he went, and a lot of his clients came to say goodbye, including Andrew Johns. Mark Taylor came to say goodbye. John Laws came to say goodbye, a whole list of them. But Joey was really special. I took this photo because Joey caused more trouble for my dad than any other client.
I do get speaking roles with Joey, and your dad features in a lot of the stories.
Yeah, including when he got done with an ecstasy pill in London, he called my mum and said, hey, I've been done with an ecstasy tablet in London. And he still laughs to this day that my mum goes, how many? He goes, she sounded like a drug dealer or something. And he said, just one. She said, well, that's good. And she said, hang on, I'll grab John. He goes, no, screw that. Hung up. He goes, I'm going to bed. Because the idea is he knew what my dad had said to him. My dad was not impressed.
No.
But on that day when they were sitting there together, they had about 45 minutes together, just the two of them in that little corner room there in the hospice. And at the end of it, I walked up to them with a video recording and I said to my dad, I said, right, and I've still got this video, I go, now that you're going, can you finally admit on all the occasions you defended this bloke and said that he'd done nothing wrong, even though he bounced from one scandal to the other, can you finally admit that he actually did make some mistakes off field during his career? Dad said to me, who? I said, him. He goes, Andrew Johns. Never in my whole career have I ever known Joey to do anything wrong.
God love him.
And Joey said, that's why he's the best.
That's why he's there.
So Joey was so caring with my dad that day, the way he sat there with him and the two of them laughed themselves stupid. And I just love that photo of Joey.
It's a fantastic photo.
With his head back, and we've seen that laugh from Joey before. Joey can be aloof when he wants to be. Certainly back in the day, I think, when he didn't have the confidence that he's got now, when his life was a bit...
He puts his guard up a bit.
Yeah, but I think something changed in Joey some years ago where he got his life sorted a bit. And then, mate, he's just the most engaging and thoughtful and intelligent person you'll come across. And the real deal. He doesn't muck around. And the respect he showed my dad throughout my dad's life, and also that day to see the two of them there together, was just amazing. And shortly after that photo was taken, my dad handed his BlackBerry. He was one of the few people left with a BlackBerry. He handed it to my brother and he said, mate, I don't think I'll need that anymore. And it was like a cop handing in their gun or their badge on their last day. That was at about 2:00 in the afternoon. I'll share one other quick one with you, MG. From there, he then went out on the balcony at the hospice and he met up with some of his mates from the pub. And they all sat outside there and they bet on a few races together and whatever. And I said to Dad, right, I got to go now, Jack. I've got to go to Tommy Malone's 40th birthday party.
Wow.
And he said, oh, mate, wish him the best. I said, well, do you want to record a video for him? He goes, all right, no worries. So Tommy at the time was running Wide World of Sports. One of the commentators was King Wally Lewis, the bloke who you intimidated in that image right behind you. Channel 9 was going through some cost cutting and all of the rugby league commentators had to take a haircut, as we call it, which is we've got to shave a bit of money off what you're earning.
Top. Yep.
Dad had been begging Tommy Malone to say, mate, don't do it to the King. You know, King Wally's in a different category. And Tommy was saying, Jack, mate, it's happening to everyone, you know. So they were negotiating that at this time. So when I said to Dad, okay, can you record a video message for Tommy? He recorded this message, which was, Tommy, happy 40th birthday, mate. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight. I certainly won't be there for your 41st. As you've probably worked out, my time on this planet is coming to an end. But if you could do me one favour before I go, it would mean the world to me. As you know, you're negotiating with the King at the moment over his contract.
Wow.
And I know that there are some difficult financial pressures at the moment, but it would mean the world to me, Tommy, if you left Wally's money where it is. Love you, mate. See you later. I button off. I go, Dad, you can't do that. It was supposed to be a friggin' birthday message. You're now like using it as your dying wish to try and get your client a deal. do you want to do another one? He goes, no, mate, that's the video. That's it. Well, Wally kept his money.
Oh, wow.
And
That speaks a lot about your dad, but also Tom Malone.
about 2 years after Dad died, I called Wally and I said, mate, I've got a video I want to send you. And I said, you need to know, it's taken me this long to be able to make this phone call to share it with you.
Wow.
I said, but mate, on his deathbed, he was going into bat for you and he used his last message to secure you a deal.
Wow.
Wally went all quiet. I went, Wally, and he was crying on the other end of the line.
Oh.
And he,
That's sensational.
and mate, to this day, the video, like, we still watch it and just laugh ourselves silly because we're like, he literally did a deal on his deathbed.
He was still working.
Yeah, and see Wally, and I was there that night, by the way. I was there the night you did that to
The king.
the King.
Not this king.
No, not that King, by the way. That King Charles up there. I'll just show you. See his glasses in the photo up there. These are King Charles's glasses.
Then Ringer.
And you know why? Because when he was here in Australia, I kept seeing his glasses. I thought, God, they're cool glasses.
Aren't they?
I ordered them.
No way.
I ordered the King's glasses online.
good.
And in fact, my executive producer of the radio show, Liam McGuire, it was him. He said, how cool are the King's glasses?
wow.
I said, I'll get you some.
And you know what? He smelt really good as well.
Did he?
He had a really good aftershave on.
Yeah, well, so I bought a pair for Liam. They weren't cheap. And then when I saw them on Liam, I thought I'd better get myself a pair. So we got the King's glasses. But I was there with Dad the night you did that to Wally. And God love you for doing it. It was one of the greatest moments at the SFS, we now call Allianz or whatever it's called. But yeah, it was one of those moments, mate, that it was a real thing for me to be able to ring Wally and to share the video with him.
Unbelievable.
And to know that that's the kind of bloke my old man was. He was always going into bat for people. And even though he only had a few breaths left,
He did it.
he didn't waste them and he got a deal done.
Well, I even after that, I became good mates with Wally, and I've known him over the last 30 years. I have two daughters with epilepsy, and Wally has a profoundly deaf daughter.
Yeah.
And that's where our allegiance mix. We do stuff for each other. We help each other out.
And I've got epilepsy
it's because of that
too.
photo. And you
I've got
died at
epilepsy
age
too.
7.
Yeah. I've said to Wally before, and also the other one was Lance Buddy Franklin came out at one stage. That was really cool for me because I was like, you didn't hear about people with epilepsy. I didn't.
No.
The kind of people who I looked up to, and I was like, well, King Wally Lewis has got it. Buddy Franklin's got it. And that's when I then said, all right, well, I'll tell my story as well about having it. And how are your girls going?
One of them has them more regular than the other. They got diagnosed at 14 with epilepsy, but it's very confronting when they have a seizure in front of you.
Well, when Wally had one on camera.
Yeah, he did.
And he then...
That was the turning point.
He then thought, I can never do this again. I'll never go on TV anymore because he thought this could happen at any time. Thank God he changed his mind on that and he went back on because he was so embarrassed. And he didn't want to say to people what it was.
No.
So...
now he's being a leading name.
Yeah, and I've had you two on before on Origin Eve.
Yeah, we have.
Several times to go, let's get the two of them back together again. But, mate, that's another memory with my old man that I'll never forget. Being there the night that happened. And then I remember the ref saying, come on, it's half time. And it just kept going. God, it was good.
Oh, yeah.
And was that the night, was that the end of the game, the kick from the sideline?
Yeah, it's Michael O'Connor.
It was Michael O'Connor.
On his bad side with a leather ball.
Well, guess where I was?
Right behind him.
No.
Where?
In the car park, in the car with Dad. Because Dad used to be one of those people who'd say,
beat the rush.
Mate, let's beat the rush. We'll leave with 4 minutes to go. We were listening to the continuous call team in the car park.
Wow.
And I said to Dad, we missed it. And he goes, mate, you still saw MG belting the shit out of Wally. So it wasn't a bad night.
Well done, Jackie Fordham. You're missed and you're a lovely man.
Love you, Jack.
We come to the last photo, which is your piece of resistance. It's you and your beautiful, beautiful family. Tell us all about Jodie and the kids. Why this is obviously the photo that makes you smile the most.
Well, I could have chosen photos of Jodie and Freddie and Pearl and Goldie and spoken individually about them, but I thought that's not going to be for an interesting listen for people. This is, I suppose, mate, my home base. I was very lucky with Jodie because, Pearl, who's in the middle of the photo, our middle child, she actually asked me just 2 days ago, she goes, did you have any girlfriends before Mum? I said, yeah, I did. She goes, how many? I said, well,
what about that age when they...
Yeah. I said, why? What does it matter? What's a body count going on here? What's happening? She said, well, Mum says she had 2 boyfriends before you. And I said, yeah. I said, I had a few more than 2.
Yeah, 22.
But everything changed when I met Jodie. It was just one of those things. I actually heard her on the radio.
Yeah, she's a journo.
She was a journo at 2UE. I called Greg Burns, the boss of 2UE, one day, who's now my boss at 2GB, and I said, mate, that Jodie Spears, boy, what a voice. And she's so good live. And he said, yeah, have you seen her? I said, no. He goes, well, wait till you see her. I said, what's that supposed to mean?
Well...
And I said, I don't know. And anyway, the next thing, I was at his 40th birthday party at the Rose Hotel in Chippendale, and this girl walked in a apricot coloured dress. She'd been at the races. And I looked around and I said to someone, who's that?
Wow.
They said, that's Jodie Spears. I went, that's Jodie Spears.
That's the voice.
So, mate, it was one of those things. The moment we met and started hanging out,
you knew?
Yeah, it was very, very quickly.
Do you have that feeling that I had when I met my wife, that I couldn't go an hour without bringing her up or talking to her, or I knew that was it. I knew she was the one.
Yeah, I think it was the case of there was nothing about her I didn't like, and there were so many things about her that I liked.
Yeah.
And I just, not that you do a pros and cons list.
No.
But if you did, mate, it was just pro. She makes me laugh. She's so smart.
That's the best thing about your partner.
Yeah.
They make you laugh.
She, and we just, I know it's a bit of a cliche. We say you got to be best friends. Well, we just love each other's company. At least I think she loves mine. And then I don't know what happened. It just felt right straight away. And then you realise we don't have too many dramas. So I'd always been in relationships where I'd convinced myself that, oh, no, that's part of the thing.
Yeah.
Everything's great one moment, then it's bad the next. And Jodie and I, mate, we can go a year without having an argument. We probably have about 2 disagreements a year.
Yeah.
Where we'll say, righto, and occasionally there've been times where she's said to me, hey, we need to have a chat.
It's usually about disciplining the kids.
Well, or disciplining me.
Or you, yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, you're not 21 anymore.
Yeah. At one stage, I gave up drinking beer and I said, I'll just drink tequila. It's better for your health. And then she said to me one stage, look, I don't know how much you know about health, but this whole theory that just drinking tequila is going to be a healthy option for you, I just don't think you've looked into it that much. So, I need the occasional ass kick. My mum will do that as well.
I was like with gin. I was like with kind of gin. The gin was my beerless drink for a while. And my wife goes,
Or my brother calls the vodka lime and sodas the NRLs. He goes, because all the NRL boys love a vodka lime and soda to try and keep the calories off. Yeah. And Jodie, it was just a match made in heaven, mate. I'm so lucky with her. She then became a news reader and a court reporter on Channel 7. She is now studying law. She's in her 3rd year of studying law, so she's going to become a lawyer.
Wow.
And she'll be representing you, MG, the next time
She will be.
do something wrong. And then the kids came along, mate. Freddie, who's 10, what can I say about Freddie? Mate, he just changed my world because that was the start of everything for me. I didn't read any parenting books.
No.
I encourage people not to.
No.
People gave them to me. I never read one of them. I just went, I'll just use Freddie as an experiment and we'll see how he goes. He's just the funniest little kid in the world. Pearl, who's 8, is so thoughtful and caring, and she just loves me so much. And she's, we've got these I like having little things with your kids that are just like an individual thing.
Yep.
We sit at the dinner table. Jodie's big on every night we sit down together, unless someone's away, but we sit next to each other and we've got, where you can link your fingers with a pinky. If I just put my pinky under the table and give her a look, she'll just link it under there.
Oh.
But we've got this game as well where sometimes she'll try and deceive me and she'll put a finger other than the pinky there. And I'll go, nah. Yeah, that's the pinky. We've just got this great vibe and she, she's going to be something, Pearl. Not that the others aren't, but I'll just give you an example. At one stage, I'm big on saying to the kids, if you want something in life, you've got to go for it. I can remember with Pearl at one stage, we're at a cafe up at Avoca and I just gave the kids an ice cream and then Pearl said, can we get some hot chips? Because she saw these old ladies with hot chips. And I said, no, honey, we just had an ice cream. She said, but I want hot chips. I said, well, sorry. Go and ask the ladies for some if you want them.
Oh, no.
She goes, what? I said, if you want them, depends how badly you want them. So anyway, she walks over and I went, oh, here we go. And I couldn't hear what she was saying. But these two old ladies listened to her and said, sure, and gave her some hot chips.
What an entrepreneur.
And, mate, she will now say to me, if you want it, you got to ask for it. And there's
Jeez, I went to club.
yeah, no, she's mate, she's just hilarious. We're in the swimming pool recently and we were getting Freddie to bring us ice and to throw it in the pool. I don't know why. We were playing some game. And she said, let's get more ice. I said, we can't keep asking Freddie to come and throw ice in the pool. And she goes, watch this. Hey, Freddie, can you bring some more ice? And he goes, okay.
Oh, yes,
and then she goes, she looks at me, she goes, that's how you do it, buddy.
How old is she?
She's 8.
She's 8.
And then there's Goldie, who's 5.
little Goldie.
And
Little Goldie.
Goldie's just a little rock star. I say to her, I go, how did we become best mates? I can't remember. And then we just tell these kind of stories because at night, Jodie will read to Freddie and Pearl, which leaves myself and Goldie laying in the big bed. We have a big bed snuggle every night.
How good.
And we've got different games that we play in there. I love playing little games with them. There's, one game we play is called Sniff a Dog. Another one which involves me throwing a toy under the doona and then she's got to go and sniffing for it like a sniffer dog. There's another one that they like playing called CCTV. Now, this is a good tip for any parent. If you just need to kill some time with your kids, I go, look, in order for me to check that you guys are behaving yourselves, I'm going to set my phone up in the corner of the room with the video recording. It's a CCTV camera. I've got to go and do some stuff for 10 minutes and I'll inspect the evidence when I get back. So then if I've got to go and make a phone call or go and do something and then you come back and, of course, they've gone berserk on the CCTV and then they want you to watch it back and they laugh at all the stuff they're doing, pulling their pants down and doing all this crazy stuff. So, yeah, we lay in bed together and I often say to her, to Goldie, I go, just remind me how we became best mates. And she'll say, well, Mummy reads to Freddie and Pearl, so Daddy and Goldie come in the room and we kind of have this great thing together. And I'll tell you the coolest thing she ever did to me. We were laying in the bottom of a bunk bed one night while we were away on holidays in a house up on the Central Coast. And we're just laying there next to each other. And, you're looking up, we're just looking up at the bunk bed above us. And, mate, out of nowhere, she tapped me on the chest and she goes, my mate.
Well,
I don't know, she was 4 or something, and I reminded her, if your kids do something cool, you've got to remind them over and over straight away because then otherwise people forget and these become part of the stories.
Well, my daughter, my youngest is 17, nearly 18, and when I was doing Brekkie Radio probably 12, 13 years ago, everyone else would do their own thing and Rafferty would have to come to bed with me because, so she was 4 or 5 and we had this thing where we made up a little, bit like you and Pearl.
Yeah.
I said to her, I love you to the moon and back. And she goes, let's make up a song, Dad, our song. So every night we'd go, I love you to the moon and back and all that crap. Rate the day. So we'd lay in bed and rate the day that we've just had.
So cool.
I'd say, so what was yours? She'd go, 4. I said, why 4? She goes, because I got in trouble at preschool and I took Tommy's food. I said, okay, well, tomorrow try and get a 6. So I said, my day was an 8. She goes, why was it an 8? I said, bit of traffic on the way to work, but when I got home, I saw you.
That's so cool. And those things, mate.
I love it. Now she's nearly 18.
Yeah. And look, people say, and if there's anyone out there watching this who doesn't have kids, people will say to you, it's all about the time you spend with them, and you'll go, yeah. But it really is, mate.
Of course it is.
They don't want time. Mate, they don't want a mansion. They don't want a private jet.
They want mum and dad.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd love a bit more time on the Nintendo and whatever if they got it. But mate, they just want you to be there, and I'm so lucky. I've got 3 crackers. And,
that's a beautiful photo.
And I think we're done on the baby front. Even though I did say to Jodie,
you going to get snipped?
No
snip.
No snip.
No, I've put it off. I see other blokes or other mates who get it done, and not as if I'm going to have any more kids myself, but I just think it's unnecessary pain.
Yeah, I've worked out a way around it.
But yeah,
I've worked out a way around it. I think most people have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as have I.
You've got to be able to work these things out without finding yourself.
It comes with years of knowing your partner.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And I would say when we were going to have 2, well, I thought in my head would have 2. And I said, I think we're pretty good. When you get settled, you go, you know what, we're in a good space.
Great, yeah.
And Jodie goes, I want a 3rd.
Yeah, always.
I said, if you go the third, you're opening the door up to a fourth.
Fourth.
So
no thought
never
of it,
say never.
No thought of the son to compliment the.
No, I think we're good, and I look at what I've got, and mate,
it's precious.
like you do, I get to meet a lot of people who go through some really tough times and lose kids and everything else. So mate, I'll just touch wood.
Right, as we do on Life in 5, we at the end of each photo segment, we ask the guest to give me 5. Today, the questions stay the same, but I'm going to ask you, Benny, 5 questions. You're going to answer me the right answers. Number 1 is your favourite band.
Well, it's not very Triple M, MG, as you
No,
spend
I'm
a
not
lot of your time
either am I anymore.
Coldplay.
Coldplay.
When they were here
Chris
recently,
Martin.
I went on night 1, I think, of their Sydney shows, and I decided while I was there that I was going to go on the Saturday night as well.
Wow, that good.
So I went on radio on the Friday and I said, who's got some spare tickets? Someone will have some spares.
Oh.
Someone called and said, mate, I've got a cousin, he's got COVID, he can't go. So I took my son, Freddie, and we went there, and I warned Freddie, I said, mate, I need to warn you, Dad's going to cry tonight, because I did the other night, because they've got certain songs that kind of Fix You is one of them, and they kind of take you to moments in your life and whatever. So, mate, to be there with my boy,
that's awesome.
With him up on my shoulders, and the security guard said at one stage, mate, he's got to get down. And I said, yeah, mate, he will after this song. And he was 3 times bigger than you. But I thought, nah, I'm enjoying this experience. So Coldplay.
Favourite song?
Favourite song is one that most people listening to this will have to look up. It's called Make the Most by Troy Cassar-Daley.
Ah, great Aussie country and western man.
Make the most of every day with you, or I think if you just search Make the Most, it's one of those songs.
It's like a motto.
Don't know how I came across it, can't quite remember. But when my dad died, I was listening to it one morning on the couch really early. I woke up early on a Saturday morning, part of, the body clock, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Friday, and I was downstairs, and Pearl came downstairs. I said before how caring she is. She came downstairs, and I'm listening to this song, and I'm crying. And she looked at me and she goes, "You've got water on your face." And I said, "Yeah, I do." She goes, I said, I'm crying. And she goes, "Are you thinking of Papa?" I said, "Yeah, I am." Yeah.
Papa, is that what she called him?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I tell my grandson.
Is that right?
Papa.
Yeah, Papa. So it's just one of those songs. I won't bother trying to do it, but I've said to Troy Cassar-Daley, I don't know Troy well, but I've met him a few times. And, mate, I called him. I said, "Mate, you do not realise the impact that you've had on me through this song, because I'll now put it on when I feel like I just kind of – and I think about Jodie, I think about my dad, I think about my mum, think about my kids. It's a cracker. Make the most."
Favourite TV series of all time?
Favourite TV series?
We have so many Netflix these days.
All time. Geez, it's hard.
There's
I reckon
Brady Bunch.
The first one I became, favourite TV show of all time, the NRL footy show.
Really?
The NRL footy show.
Fatty and Sterlo days.
Fatty and Sterlo and everything else. I mean, I just think Glenn Pallister, who was the EP of that show, is a mate of mine. What he did on that show, throwing out the rule book, having people host a show who had no idea what they were doing, the crazy stuff that went on. And, when they knocked down Channel 9 at Willoughby, the big old Channel 9 building, they said to staff members, "Look, we're knocking the building down. If you want to come in here and collect anything that's going to be thrown out, feel free." So I went in there and I took the kids in and whatever, and we were going through, and we went through the props department. And this was a lot of the stuff that everyone else had left behind, right? But I found the footy show joke book, right, which I've still got.
Wow.
And also there was a great moment on there where Paul Gallen had said that Queenslanders have 2 heads. And, of course, Queensland went into meltdown before Origin. And then they were doing a live Origin show from some Suncorp Piazza or something in Brisbane in front of, 15,000 Queenslanders. And they said to Gal, "Mate, you're going to have to address the 2-headed comment," right? So they did this thing where they said, "Look, before we get underway, as you would have seen, there's been controversy this week about Paul Gallen saying that all Queenslanders have 2 heads. He would like to apologise." So he came out.
With the joke book.
He came out and he goes, "Look, I'm really sorry that I said it." He goes, "I've actually got it. It makes it even worse because I've got family in Queensland and I've got a brand new little nephew who's just been born who's a Queenslander. And, so I really feel sorry for him. He goes, in fact, I want to introduce you to him. And they brought a pram on. And what they did is they got a two-headed baby, right? So they got a little baby, like a pretend, a doll. But the props department mocked it up so it had a Queensland jersey on and it had two heads, right? Well, I've got the two-headed baby.
Wow.
Yeah, in my garage.
You should have brought that in today. That'd have been good.
So, and I've shown it to Gal before, so, I'll give it to the footy show.
Yeah, that's a great nomination. Presuming rugby league's your favourite sport, what is your other favourite sport?
Other favourite sport? To watch or to play or to...
I'd say to watch.
To watch.
You sit in your lounge and go, that's on.
I reckon basketball.
NBA?
Yeah, I reckon basketball, only because I remember Alan Jones said once, he goes, the thing with basketball is you only need to watch the final minute.
That's true.
And it's true. It goes for about 10 minutes or so. But as far as a sport that's just action-packed and exciting to watch, then again, mate, as a kid, and I'm going to sound like a weirdo saying this, my brother and I used to watch 10-pin bowling.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, mate. It would come on, I think, on a Sunday morning. Yeah, sometimes you'd be waiting for the cartoons to start and 10-pin bowling would come on.
Puffin stuff would finish.
Yeah, and it would pop up. But, yeah, I'm not really...
Who's your league team?
League team, well, mate, Ricky Stewart is one of the closest mates I've got in the world.
Yep.
So while I cheer on the South Sydney Rabbitohs... the truth is if I could choreograph a season ending, it would be the Raiders winning, because I love Ricky so much. And when I showed that photo before with John Howard as a young bloke going to Canberra. When I went to Canberra, I called Ricky and I said, "What suburbs should I be looking for a share house?" And he said, "Just move in with me."
Wow.
And mate, Brad Clyde lived next door.
Yep.
The Green Machine were in their heyday, right, with Laurie Daly and Stevie Walters.
Belcher, Lazarus.
Mal Meninga.
Played against them in 2 grand finals, man.
Mate,
They were the team to beat.
And so, I love the Raiders and I love Ricky.
Okay, Ben Fordham has done something wrong. You're in jail.
Yep.
You've now been given one option as your death row meal. What are you eating? And what are you washing? And what are you washing it down with?
Steak and chips.
What's the gravy? Any gravy?
Yeah, I'd say... normally it would be peppercorn, but if it was my last one, maybe a Diane or something like that, one of the creamier kind of ones.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But look, when Jodie and I got married, Jodie organised the wedding, but I said, look, there's one thing I'm organising. I'm organising the meals.
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to have a thing where it's fish and chicken or steak or whatever. So I got my mate Dobbo, Ben Dobbin, who's now a radio star
used to be
in Brisbane.
A farmer.
He used to be a farmer and a butcher. So he did the steak. And I said, I want everyone to have beautiful Wagyu and chips.
Oh.
So we had steak, chips and salad.
How good.
I'd wash it down with a glass of red wine. And for dessert, a McFlurry.
Oh, yeah, what flavour? Caramel?
All of them.
Hot caramel.
Mate, on your last one,
I'll get them all.
I'm bringing every McFlurry that's ever been produced and I'll make my way through the list.
Well, speaking of wine, on behalf of Lily Pilly Wines, we'd like to give you that for
Lily
today.
Pilly?
Yes, it's a nice little Shiraz and a Sauv Blanc.
Oh, from Leeton?
Yes.
Which is Mark Taylor territory.
That's it.
Lily Pilly Wines.
They're the wines that I have bought into.
With your own money?
With my own money. And some of 2GB's.
Lilypilly.com, mate.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Benny Fordham, you have been awesome today. This is your life in 5.
Oh, mate, thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And congratulations, mate.
You are
and
awesome.
Thanks for having me on.